What'd you think?
Oh man, let's go.
All
The
official.
gong, dude.
I like
There
that.
is there a better gong sound than that right there? I think
I
that's the
took
best one
that
on the
directly
internet.
from the Freight Gong website.
But, okay, I'm curious, Bill. Do you hit a gong quite often? Have you ever hit a gong? I'm guessing you have, but like, is that something that you do at Flexport or anything like that? Is that a ritual?
We did have a gong, like one of those little mini gongs at Coyote back in the day. The classic sales gong. But no.
Okay.
Somebody needs to trace the lineage of the gong back in broker history. Like we need to find the earliest kind of signs of gongs used in the brokerage world. Maybe one day.
I also want to know if any broker has because gongs are expensive. Like the big gongs are like 30 grand. You can get gongs for like $30,000-$40,000, like the really big ones.
$30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, like the big 3 feet across, 4 feet across ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than I expected that it would cost. That's for sure.
So everybody has the little ones, which are just kind of tinny. You want the big, massive,
big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Big
All right. Good deal. Bill, where are you calling in from? Where are you based out of?
So I'm based out of San Francisco, but I'm actually calling in from New York City today.
Oh, nice. Cool. What's going on in New York?
So my son, actually, he turns 12 today, so came up here for his birthday.
Happy birthday.
That's awesome. Are you originally from New York? I hear a slight New York accent.
No, I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, but my...
Oh, okay.
Close.
Got it.
Close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Sometimes a little Texas accent comes out, but my parents were all from East Coast, so I think I got a little bit of a mixed accent.
Good deal. Awesome. Well, Bill, welcome to Freight Gong Friday. We tend to just kind of go live every Friday at 8 a.m. It's Reed, Christian, and I, and just kind of talk on freight topics, but you're our special guest, so we definitely want to dive in and kind of learn more about you. You definitely have a very, I guess, like important and just very known name in the industry. So happy to dive in here and just kind of learn more about you. If you could, Bill, maybe just give an introduction to everyone that's watching, who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
Yeah, so currently EVP of trucking at Flexport. Of course, big news is that we relaunched the Convoy platform just this week. Just went live with it yesterday. I've been in freight since 2006. So I started my career at Pepsi. I was at Pepsi for about 7 years. And Pepsi had put me through a grad program at MIT where I met Jeff Silver, who was the founder of Coyote. And before he founded Coyote, I mean, he was at Backhaulers and then he founded Coyote. So he was the one that sold me on the idea of freight brokerage. And then I joined as fourth employee at Coyote. Spent 8 years at Coyote building that up. A lot of different roles there. Last role, I was running the development team. So kind of more on the side of the house. And then a couple years at Amazon. Actually had the opportunity to launch freight brokerage in Amazon, which has now evolved into be under the Amazon Freight umbrella. And then took a brief pit stop as COO at a company called Pillow Homes, but then was advising Otto, which is the autonomous trucking company that Uber acquired. And that part of that whole transaction, we pitched the idea of Uber Freight within that. So then came on and spent almost 7 years building up Uber Freight, and then came on to Flexport to build trucking here. And of course now with the Convoy tech acquisition, we've accelerated that quite a bit. So long and storied history in brokerage. It didn't set out to be in freight brokerage. Originally, I thought I was going to be a mechanical engineer, but
is that what you studied?
You what?
Is that what you studied? And
I originally, yeah. So when I left high school, I was a big car nerd, and I went to Georgia Tech originally to get a mechanical engineering degree. I was on the Formula SA team, but then I dropped out of Georgia Tech and started a race car fabrication shop up in Vermont and did that for about 3 years. Wasn't making a lot of money at that, and then moved back to Dallas and finished school at SMU, and it was interning at Frito-Lay, of course, part of Pepsi, and that's how I got sucked into the kind of operations side, and that eventually led to.
Once you're in freight, you never get out. Basically, is the moral of the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, should I pull up a screen? I could put up Twitter real quick. Everyone's cool with that.
Yep.
Just pull it up here.
I'm already getting some heat in the comments here.
I know you're getting heat. Where's Reed's please advise cap? Reed's not wearing the please advise cap for the first time ever. Someone's really excited here. Let's go. So Ryan Peterson, I mean, he just like he crushes it on Twitter, and overall he's got. I was watching his presentation. I didn't watch it live at Manifest. I was watching the recap of it online yesterday, and I really liked the presentation. He did a great job. I'm just curious, like, do you spend a lot of time with Ryan, or like, how's that? How's your relationship? Like,
yeah, Ryan's great.
Ryan's
great. I mean, he brings a lot of founder energy. I mean, he obviously his depth of knowledge is incredible. You know, because he built Flexport originally because he had been on the other side. He had been a shipper. He had seen the pain, so he's very much coming at it as a customer, and I think just has just a wealth of ideas. But yeah, it's been great working with Ryan.
Okay, awesome.
When did you first meet him? Like, how long ago?
So during the interview process. So I had I think everybody knows Ryan or knows of Ryan, but as I came on board originally, he was part of the process, and then we've just spent a lot of time together since then.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely Ryan's a big name.
So
I'm wondering.
Convoy has been. You guys acquired it. It was not 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Yeah. So the sequence of events was like mid-October. I don't remember the exact date now when the news came out. And then I reached out to Dan. Ryan reached out to Dan. We had a conversation. We kicked off the conversations right after that news broke that they were kind of winding down. And the way that it went down is they packaged up. So the bank came in, took over. It's been like to control sell the assets, took on all that kind of ARAP, going from there, and then we stepped in and had a conversation. We're able to, with 24 hours, come to an agreement on rough terms on buying just the technology. So then on November 1st, or it was the beginning of November, is when we were able to close on the deal. We had rights to all the technology. We had rights to all of the brand name, all that. Basically, all that got packaged up. But we didn't hire any people. We didn't actually buy the business. We didn't buy any of the assets or liabilities. So, we didn't buy a business. We bought the tech, and we had to turn it back all back on. And then we brought over a core tech team, and then since then we brought on like a sales leader, Spencer Henniger, who's over there at Convoy. We built the team under him. We started to build the operations teams back up. But that day that it shut down, most people associated with Convoy at that point were let go. So we had to rebuild a lot of the team and put it back together.
That's that's kind of cool. I'm wondering what's so unique and special about the Convoy technology that they created, that made you want to buy it.
Yeah, of course I had a privileged view because I spent almost 7 years with an Uber Freight building up that capability. And, the first 3 to 4 years of our journey, it was very much, head to head. This was I was looking on the outside at Convoy and admiring kind of what they were building, and we were always comparing features and understanding how they were coming at it differently, and how they're positioning it differently. And I think it's one of those things too, where if you go back to, when I was at Uber, I remember there's a lot of people that be like, the Uber application is it's basic, right? Anybody could build this. It seems very simple, but it's not the basic application. It's not the fact that you can match and I also remember early on with the digital brokers, there was a lot of it's digital freight matching. Anybody can do matching. We've had this for years. And so there was a lot of that conversation that I think what people don't get is how difficult it is to get certain parts of that to work, like the pricing to work, to get carriers to actually engage, to get the feedback loops and the bidding mechanisms that actually get them to execute. And then driving there's so much investment around just making all the tracking work, keeping the drivers building it's ultimately about building a better product experience for owner operators and small carriers more than anything. It's how do you keep them engaged, and what are all the little details and like all the little behavioral things you need to drive to make sure that they're using the application from end to end, that you have the right incentives, that you're building a better product, that carriers actually appreciate what you've built. There's a lot of work around that, a lot of work around pricing. Convoy, of course, also built a lot of technology around trailers and trailer optimization, because they had this Convoy Go product where, it was all about universal trailer pool and utilizing that. Now, we didn't bring that product back to market, but it's just another area where they invested deep. If you look at the amount of investment in Convoy, I mean, a significant percent of that was with engineering, product and engineering. And there's just, the stack is one, it's just very well built, right? It was an incredible team of developers that built it. What we're finding is the tooling behind it as an example, like as we turn the market back on, our ability to precisely target carriers, to drive email campaigns, drive messaging campaigns to get them back on, and then to immediately have the prices be accurate and correct and have them engage. Like all that work, you can't overstate how challenging just getting some of that to work is, because I think on the surface, some of this seems easy. Like you post a load, you post a price, and you hit a button, you book it. But underlying that is actually getting the drivers to engage, building like I'll give you a good example. Things like detention are automated, check calls, right? A lot of that process is automated. And it sounds simple, but then if you think about all the nuance of like actually managing a load and how all the little decisions and business logic that you just kind of naturally do, things like, am I going to call a driver if pickups at 6 a.m.? Am I going to call a driver at 4 a.m., right? Or 3 a.m., right? If my SOP is to call 3 hours ahead, well, probably not, right? Those kind of things sound simple, but it just takes time to, I think, build all that into the tooling. So
that seems like you're on the track to having the brokerage do more and more automated digital tasks. Do you see it? I always ask this question and the guys laugh at me, but like, you ever see it being possible that there's like a zero person brokerage ever?
I don't think so. This is one of those, I think, learnings having gone through this journey with Uber Freight and now launching Convoy, is that I think there was a time where I believed that this could be all things to all people. I think that on a long horizon, like 30 years, maybe, but there's always a place for the broker, particularly when engaging with the shipper. Because I think ultimately, what is a broker? It's specialized expertise. If you look across it's when you hire a broker, if you're a shipper, you're ultimately outsourcing part of your transportation capability and your transportation team, right? And if you're a small shipper, you probably can't invest in that very heavily, and so you rely on a broker for their specialized expertise, their ability to source a truck at the last minute, all like the ability to know where the market rate is, like all this. That's expertise that a broker builds just because they are operating the market every day. If you're a small shipper, you maybe have 2 people in your transportation department, maybe 1 if you're small, really small, right? So you just can't build that, and so that role never goes away. I think what goes away is all the kind of busy work and the mechanics on the other side. I do think on the buy side, going to market and procuring, particularly with owner operators, small carriers, yes, I think that's where you'll see more automation. What I also don't think goes away is like a broker building a relationship with mid to large carriers, where there's still people in the middle of that conversation, and you're having a different level of conversation, is where when you're just sourcing transaction, a single load, yes, I think a lot of that will be automated over time. I think that's the opportunity. I don't think, again, this market doesn't move super fast, so I don't think it's going to happen overnight. But yes, I think that's the interesting part to me, and where as we're thinking about where does that tech really add value, it really starts with the owner op and small carrier and kind of builds up from there. There's a lot of areas where I'd say the value is more marginal, or where it wasn't quite as crisp, but it was very clear that with owner operators in that small capacity, that added a ton of value, and not just for shippers, but also for brokers, because that's just hard capacity to access typically.
What so were you guys thinking about entering this domain prior to the acquisition? I know you guys bought like Shopify. You bought something from Shopify, right? So there's obviously something going on there. If this Convoy never came up for sale, like what would you guys be doing now? Like, would you be building the same thing, or would you be doing something different?
Yeah, I mean, it's really like it's crazy in retrospect just how the stars aligned in this, because when I came on originally, if you go back, there was like a press release and it said it basically mentioned building an Uber Freight or Convoy-like capability within Flexport. So certainly when I came on, my expectation and my intention was to up-level the trucking capability in Flexport. So Flexport, if you don't know, it's like the third largest forwarder in the U.S. It's the only forwarder. Ryan likes to sell the fact it's the only forwarder that started after the internet.
Yeah.
So, most forwarders are just very legacy, old tech, right? More conservative in how they come to market. Flexport was tech driven from the day one. So, it has that unique positioning in the market. And it's also been very shipper centric. And as just being a forwarder, we have a lot of trucking because every ocean move, every air move ends on a truck. So that's always been a big part of the business. But it hadn't been invested at the level that I think the scale of volume actually warranted. And so we recognized, Ryan and the leadership team recognized, hey, we need to build better capabilities here. We have enough, we have a ton of dray volume, and that dray volume particularly was the focus out of the gate. Like, how can we, and if you ever go down to like the Port of Long Beach, what you'll see is a lot of owner operators too at the port. You'll see a lot of sleeper cabs, which, like, why would you see a sleeper cab in a port for somebody running like dray moves across town? Well, probably because they don't just want to do, dray moves. Right? They love to do long hauls. So there's a cross dispatch opportunity there too. So that was very interesting for when I came on. I was like, okay, how can we take all this drayage freight and then build out from there? You pulled it up.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah.
So this was in May. This was last May that you.
In May, I joined. I joined into May last year. So it's.
Dude, you've wow, that's crazy. So you've had a lot happen since you've been there.
Yes, and
was when the Convoy news started. Well, I mean, remember over the summer where it came out that they had hired an investment bank? Remember that? It was like July or something like that. And they were like, there was all this speculation about like if they were going under, all this stuff. When did you guys really start to be like, oh, hey, what about Convoy? Was it not until the news came out that they were belly up, or were you?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I mean, they were in a process. They had other, they were talking to obviously other companies, and like it's definitely a lot of things like went the wrong way, of course, for them to end up in the state that they did at the end. But we had not considered it. We were definitely not at that time like really out there looking at the. I very much was of the mindset that we were going to build this internally. We had started investing in it. We had started building out certain capabilities, but I also knew that was going to be a long journey, right? That having gone through it, I knew that it was going to take time. But I did see this unique opportunity that, hey, we could start with the pool of freight we have and build up from there and go. So
how did you convince the team at Flexport to go about basically not a full acquisition, but a partial acquisition during, like, I think at that time it was already a pretty bad freight market, or the market like already started to become like pretty bad. It was a rough time, I think, for everybody at that point, right? So and another acquisition, it might have been tough, to justify, but like where did that actually get over the edge?
I think anybody would have. I think there's a lot of companies that would have executed on the deal that we executed on. I think
it was cheap. It was cheap.
Yeah, I can't. Like,
it was cheap. Come on, it was so cheap.
I mean, I think part of why Flexport was able to get to land this deal, I mean, there's two reasons. I think one was we were just able to move very quickly. Within 30 minutes of us knowing the news, like Ryan and I and Dan were on the phone and had like rough, I think, terms of how we would proceed. So we were able to just move very quickly. Just Flexport, just culturally, still a very tech-oriented, fast-moving, founder-led company, and so I think we just had that advantage. And two, culturally, there was a strong fit. I mean, I think Dan has been a fantastic partner throughout this whole process, and I think he wanted to ensure that the tech landed in safe hands, and that with a company that would, as we have, like bring it back to market, and that knew the value of it and how to leverage that and what to do with it. So I think that was definitely a big part of it as well, because ultimately I think everybody involved in this wanted to ensure that on the other side of this, that it had a second life, and that the value, like we got to the core value, and that we could scale it and rebuild it. So I think those two things, but the speed was definitely, it was the 24 hours that we had to kind of work through this and close and get to rough terms.
We got a question from a shipper, Marco, from Dole Foods. How many people now support convoy operations now under Flexport?
It's a good question. I will say we aren't sharing the specific numbers of convoy people that we brought over. We've got, I don't know the latest stats and total headcount across Flexport as well, but we hired quite a solid team. We certainly are scaling the operations team ahead of us bringing freight onto the platform, and we can bring enterprise shippers onto the platform. We're seeing it. So just a little bit of context in the launch too, like we started piloting it a couple weeks ago, where we were putting freight through the platform at small volumes, freight that we had that was captive freight. We just turned on a large enterprise shipper and have started to scale up other shippers onto the platform just this week. And Ryan shared the number, but we had, within 24 hours, we had a couple hundred loads getting posted, and that's continued to scale quite dramatically. And we're seeing the freight just book, just fly off the board. So it's been quite exciting the last, I'd say, 24 to 48 hours within the team as we've launched this. But we made sure we had all the ops we needed prior to launch, and that's where we brought on some of the convoy team. Also, of course, Flexport has a deep operations bench. We are very shipper oriented. We have a squad model. Every shipper has a dedicated squad that manages their freight, and so we're very we have a huge backstop in terms of just capabilities with Flexport.
Bill, if I may, I'm kind of curious to take it back to you being the fourth employee at Coyote. Yep. Can you kind of like tell us how that was like? Because that was what, like 06, if I'm not like mistaken, like around that time. Okay, and that was Chicago, right? Lake Forest.
Yeah, April 2006. So, yeah, I'll walk through that whole journey because I think it's like freight lore, right? How these things, there's key events. So I met Jeff Silver at MIT. I was in this Masters of Supply Chain program. It used to be called the Master Logistics. Now it's the Master Supply Chain Management program.
At MIT, right?
At MIT. That was 2002, 2003. It's like a one-year master's program. The program was pretty young, so they were just trying to get people onto the program at that time. And so, Jeff was in his non-compete period because he had, him and Paul Obe had sold American backhaulers to C.H. Robinson. And then I think Paul did not go to CH, or maybe he did for a shorter period of time, but his non-compete was shorter. Jeff had gone to CH, had been there for a while, and then had a 5-year non-compete. It was pretty, onerous, right? And so during that time, during his non-compete, he said, I always want to get a master's. And so this master's at MIT program, of course, everybody would why not? Would love to do that. So he went to that. He also got an MBA at Michigan in that same period. Anyway, I met him there. He was definitely recruiting at the program. He was selling me hard on I'm going to restart this in April 2006. Where my non-compete runs out, then I'm definitely going to start another company. I came from that program. Chris Pickett, also who's at Flock Freight, CEO over there, was in that program. There were only 32 people in that class, so it was a small class. So 10% of the class ultimately ended up working at Coyote. And actually, yeah, that's it. We hired other people from that program later, but anyway, it was a small cohort. You get the idea. I went back to Pepsi to pay down because Pepsi had actually sponsored me through that program. I went back to Pepsi and paid that down. Pepsi had me actually commuting to Chicago, so I was in Chicago already, which is the interesting part of that. And then I'd kept in touch with Jeff through this process. There was Paul had gone and started Command already because his non-compete ran out earlier. And Jeff and Paul were very close. And originally, we had started Coyote to be a software company to build Bazooka, which was the platform. And so in April when we started that, it was just to build the software. And I started going out with Jeff to pitch companies on it. We had a few big companies signed up on the platform. And then I started, like, I remember I went down to Strive Logistics, which is Ben Green's brokerage, which is ended up getting acquired by Redwood, I believe. But spending time on the floor, booked my first load ever, right? We were just selling them on the platform. I think what we realized very quickly with that was that it was the platform that, it's interesting now because Jeff, of course, is with Mastery, and Mastery is effectively doing that, but also doing it for large carriers. But we realized very quickly a lot of I think the vision behind the platform wasn't how, it was very much the Chicago model with carrier and sales, and a lot of brokers were still operating in cradle to grave. And I don't think Jeff really wanted to build a software to support cradle to grave. Like, he had a vision of how ops should run too. And two, I think the itch was just so strong to build a broker again. So we pivoted pretty quickly, and it was August of 2006 that we were like, hey, we're going to just go all in on brokerage. And as part of that too, we had actually done our first implementation of Bazooka in France at a company called eGlobe. And Jeff had been over to France and actually had invested in eGlobe. And coming back, he was like, we got a broker. We got a broker. So that all happened very quickly. And then we brought on, so Mark Ford was the first brokerage hire, who now runs the brokerage at Blue Grace. I mean, the Coyote ecosystem is strong, like the network. And we brought him on, and then I know Chris Pickett joined shortly after that, and we were kind of off to the races after that. So yeah, it was.
Bill, I got an ancient relic for you. Let me know if you recognize this one from June 2003.
Oh, is that my thesis? Yes.
Pricing strategies for continuous replenishment for perishable goods.
Yeah, this I'll give you the synopsis of this. This was actually for Frito-Lay. I was working at Frito-Lay and Pepsi. I did supply chain planning. I say I was I would be called a data scientist today, but back then it was just analyst. I built a lot of like optimization engines, and one of the questions that we had back then was Frito-Lay, Pepsi, and Frito-Lay. All these heavily branded, CPG or food companies tend to be marketing and sales led, and the marketing team would always run these huge promotions during every holiday. And the thesis was all about, okay, how much did that actually cost us on the supply chain side? Because it would cause all sorts of pain, at the manufacturing facilities and the production plants, and just throw everything into chaos, because we'd run these huge spikes of production and promotions that were kind of unpredictable. And the thesis was like, okay, well, is the benefit of the promotion actually offset by the cost impact on the back end? It was inconclusive in the end. It's hard to do deep research in like 9 months, but that's what the thesis was about. Yeah.
I'm wondering,
really going to the archive.
Yeah.
Is a master's in supply chain, does it actually did you feel like you learned a lot from it? Was it worth it? I mean, I know you were sponsored by Pepsi, so would you have paid for it if it was just your own money?
That program, absolutely. That particular program has been so impactful for my own journey, because of course, that's how the network was obviously, I can't overstate the value of that. I mean, that's how I ended up in this space. But also it's a program I've tapped into continually. I stayed real close with Chris Kaplis, as an example, who leads the Center for Transportation Logistics there. And the network's super strong. The quality of the content, of course, is super strong as well. And it really is choose your own adventure. When you're in a program like that, there's a small, I forget the exact number of credits, but there's a certain percent of credits, maybe 30% that you have to take. Pretty much everything else is free for, you could pick which programs across all of MIT you want to take. So I tried to go real deep actually on operations research back then. And yeah, it was you can't, it was incredible. Would I pay? Yeah, I definitely would pay for it out of my own money. I also went and then did a part-time MBA. I would say I'd got less value out of that program. I think an MBA, it's very much, I think most of the value of those programs is if you're with a group of people for which you're building strong connections that are also going to then go, do things that you want to do that are across people, as they progress in their career, I think you continually tap into some of these networks. And that, for me, with the MIT program, that was 70% of the value, and 30% of it was the actual education. But yeah, it was.
That's great to know.
Yeah,
I'm curious. I was curious about that. We actually have another question, real quick, if you don't mind, Bill. here is from John Ferguson. Do you see that question below or no?
Yeah, with the integration of Convoy's technology in the Flexport platform, what new advancements? Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this, and actually I've been talking to the team quite a bit. And, of course, we brought over a lot of the engineering team and the staff engineers and incredibly smart people from Convoy who also have thought about this quite a bit. So, AI is kind of it covers a lot of things. Like we have ML models, we have some of the tooling that would classify as AI to do things like our bidding and our pricing. So we have some of those capabilities built in already. I think where people really focus lately in the conversation is LLMs, these large language models. And what we're finding is that, it's hard to craft really tight use cases. Now, there's companies out there that I find quite compelling that are building AI, not just AI chatbots, but actually AI call bots, right? You call them, and they have production implementations of these, and they're actually working right now, which I find fascinating. I think some of them still sound,
in real time too, like
in real time.
It's gonna be like another 12 months.
Yeah, they're pretty cool, but a lot of the use cases that they're using those for are things that we've already automated out within Convoy. So as an example, like rate negotiation, that all just happens within the app. So we within our ecosystem have already kind of engineered out some of the use cases that people are finding value for, like tracking as an example too. Like tracking is almost entirely automated through the app, and that's what a lot of the investment is. How do you kind of coach the drivers and incentivize them to use the application? So then you don't need a bot. But I do think that for like long tail of brokers, and there's a lot of spaces where that will drive value, and it is working now. It is working, but what I don't know, and what some of these companies I think don't have a ton of data yet, is like where they're not, maybe don't always share out, is the like fall off rates. And I haven't heard one yet where I couldn't identify that it was an AI, but I think on the first couple sentences, maybe you're like, yeah, is this? You have a question, but by the time you actually start engaging, it's like none of them are to the point where it's like totally natural, right? There's always this uncanny valley. It's a little bit, you kind of lead yourself into understanding, okay, I'm talking to AI. And I think one of the companies told me is that when they first launched the product, they had it announced right out of the gate, said, hey, this is Ginny, your AI assistant, and people just hang up, right? So you still have to get over that hurdle because people want to talk to people. And I think that's where it will be interesting to me, is like how much, because I think the future on a lot of these use cases is just to engineer it out and automate it. And so in that case, is the AI the right end state, or is that just a stopgap? And then where will AI really play a role? Because these LLMs, like the challenge with them is, you need very robust, so like another challenge we have is that in order to seed the LLM, you typically need a lot of manual data, if you're going to train calls as an example, you need a lot of historical calls and scripts. And if you're not actually making calls, then you can't train it, right? So there's some challenge there too, like in terms of just how you engineer it and how you think about implementing it. But yeah, it's fascinating. I love it.
What do you think? What happens when two companies?
This is a great one. Yeah, I saw this too, right? They ultimately held themselves accountable to what the AI.
Yeah, that was a funny one. I was reading it this week, and so the AI chatbot, like I think, promised some kind of rates or some kind of fare that it actually couldn't like provide, and then it ended up having to pay out like whatever the damage was to the person. So
yeah, and I could totally see. I mean, there's so many savvy people in this space, right? I could totally see
carriers are going to figure it out instantly and like get it to promise them $1 million on a lane somehow.
Like, okay, you only pay me $700, but could you pay me $10,000 for detention? Because figure out some. I totally could see that being gamed.
Yeah, I'm actually curious because I love stories, and I love where you're talking about Coyote, Bill. Like, how was that like? Because you were there for like the whole part like of growing it until it got acquired by UPS. Like, what were the takeaways from that? And were you based in Chicago then, and Lake Forest?
Talking for that whole journey. In fact, we Coyote started up in Lake Forest. And if you know Chicago, right? It's pretty far north, and I was living in the city, so I'd take the metro up every day. 191.
It's like the last stop.
Yeah,
Is it the last stop, Lake Forest?
No, because it goes all the way to Kenosha. That line goes all the way.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It goes to Kenosha. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was did a lot of reading and a lot of work on that train back and forth over the years. Yeah, I mean, I think early on, so it was one of those rare opportunities too, right? Because again, very few companies scale and are successful and get sold off. Like it's just you don't, and not in for $1.8 billion. Like it's a very rare opportunity to be in the middle of a company and come on as the fourth employee. So like I look back to that as like a golden time, because definitely Jeff had done it before. He had a very clear vision. He knew what he wanted to do. I think there was for me coming in, I was definitely came in. If you can't tell, like I was a bit of a nerd. I was definitely like in the data, like this data science track of my career. I thought that's where I was going to go. So if Jeff hadn't come into the picture, I'd probably be like a senior director of data science at some probably some company, right? Because there's a lot of things that I think just that Jeff understood that I didn't understand at the time, because I was young, like a young analyst, like the value of salesmanship. Like he made everybody pick up the phone and book freight, right? He made everybody get on, like particularly in those early years, you had to, I mean, really, I don't think that ever changed as long as I was there, that every new recruit had to spend time booking freight in the hot pod, right? And calling carriers. And because you had to learn the operations from the ground up. And I thought that was incredibly valuable. And then just the value of sales. Like he put me right in the hot seat on sales right out of the gate, like selling even like first couple months, like going out to, I remember going out to CRST as an example. It's a customer we were selling on it back then. And like just trying to sell them on Bazooka, like a month and a half into this, being on the job and really knowing nothing about freight at all. I'm like, who's this guy? So I like the value of sales, and particularly in an entrepreneurial setting, like it's all sales. Like that's what you're doing all day long, right? You're selling people on joining the company. You're selling customers, you're selling partners, right? You're selling into the ecosystem, right? You just have to have that instinct, and you have to build that capability. So I think that was huge. And then just like the level of hustle, because everybody was all in. And one thing that I think Coyote's always called out for, there's a couple things. One is just culture. I mean, very good at one of Jeff's focuses, and one thing they were very good at was just bringing people fresh into the industry and bringing people out of college, and how to cultivate that and build that out. And two is like the branding. Like I think it was very unique at the time in terms of just the level of branding that Coyote brought relative to a lot of the other. It was, I think, a level above a lot of what had been brought in the space before. So yeah, it was just business building 101. And then I was fortunate to be able to play a lot of different roles as we built that up, and then be a part of it and just learn the business from ground up. And you do see the lessons of Coyote. There's been a lot of companies, of course, that have kind of spun off or have similar models, and it's really Coyote, Command, American Backhaulers, and kind of draw a line from all those onto like Arrives and many of the others that have come on since then. Molo, of course.
Yeah. Has Flexport considered acquiring Coyote?
That's definitely, I've heard of so
We've heard some things.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Well, I can't. Yeah, they say in these situations you never comment, because then when there is a real situation, you also want to, you don't want to have any tells.
Sure. I put you in the hot seat on that one.
But
there's a lot of rumors out there right now with someone acquiring.
That's probably like a less substantiated rumor, but yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors myself as well. I think, I'm hearing that there will be like news on this pretty shortly. So of course I know a lot of people still at Coyote, and that network's pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. We need to break this news on Freight Gong Friday. So if you can give us any leads, let us know.
I get Gamble or one of the OG Coyotes still around on it.
Was there ever a question of you guys maintaining Convoy's branding or rolling it up under Flexport? Was there ever a question of
that? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's. I mean, it's a very reasonable debate. Like, because particularly just as things evolve, I think there was a lot of questions. Like, would people have a positive or negative view of Convoy? And I think in the end, I talked to a lot of carriers and shippers and brokers through the process, and continue to talk to them. And going through those groups, like the carriers, there definitely were carriers, there was news about carriers not getting paid. I think a lot of that has since gotten sorted. The bank has been working, and trying to be thoughtful and work through that process. And I think a lot of that also came from the factors, because it was really like most carriers were on like 1 day or 2 day quick pay. So, they weren't, maybe they had 1 or 2 loads, but it's the carriers that were being factored and then working through the factoring companies. But a lot of that I think has been managed. And for those carriers, they had 8 years of good experience, and then they had, things wound down. But after the kind of dust settled, most carriers that had used the platform were super eager to get back on the platform. Like the quotes and the feedback I got from carriers, I had the quote actually in the press release was a real quote from when I had started calling out carriers, and we called them back to verify it. But our PR team was like, "Is this a real quote, or did you just like make this up? Because it's just too good to be true." Because that's what I heard from drivers was they didn't uninstall the app. They were just waiting to see if it turned back on. Like that, if they could, they would magically click it every day to see if loads came back on the platform. I got a lot of feedback that among all the apps, like it was definitely, there was like a top tier of apps, and then a lot that just weren't, didn't have anything near the level of automation or capabilities of what Convoy had brought to the table. And so there were a lot of carriers that were just eager to see it back on. And given that, then, if you think of it from a branding perspective, well, that tells me there's a ton of brand equity with those carriers, and that they really did, value what Convoy brought, and they know what Convoy means to them. And so if we were going to put Flexport on the app and then one day they log in, it's an F versus a C, right? Would create some confusion in the market, right? Versus they know what Convoy means. They know, and there's incredible credibility and brand equity that the team built over 8 years. And that didn't, regardless of how things wound down at the end, that didn't erode that brand equity. That brand equity was still there. And similar with shippers, I called a lot of shippers, and they said, "Hey, yes, we got a ton of value out of this. They were top of our scorecard. We saw it." And same with the brokers. Brokers understood, right at the end, Convoy was having a lot of success with brokers and selling that product. And so I think it would, definitely Flexport for us is it's Convoy is a sub brand of Flexport, but the Convoy brand as a platform, we're also, the way that we are positioning this is Convoy is very much the tech platform. Convoy is not the broker. So I think that's the one key distinction. So Flexport works with shippers. Flexport has a brokerage, legacy that we've had. We've managed truckload through that. But Convoy is just the platform. Convoy is a brand to carriers, and Convoy is a brand to brokers. But Flexport is the shipper side. And so Flexport is the service provider. Convoy is the technology platform on the truckload side.
Bill, you saw this question, yes, I believe, and on Twitter. So we asked, what we should ask Twitter. And to this point on Convoy.
Zoom in a little bit, Christian.
Yeah, sorry. So it says from Adam DeGroot, he's asking, what in your estimation was the fatal error Convoy committed that you will avoid?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question.
Real quick, I think Ryan Joyce asked the same question, so I just wanted to, bundle it up.
More or less same thing. Yep.
Yeah. So we're definitely approaching it very differently, and I think, without sharing specific numbers, we definitely have a much smaller team bringing this back to market, and so from a pure run rate perspective, we're in a very different position than Convoy was when it all wound down. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I think it's it's easy to kind of second guess it after the fact. But I'll say at a high level, context in the market is definitely a big part of that, right? If you just look at the environment having been at Uber Freight, we were in the same environment when we started. It was zero interest rate environment, cash was cheap, the motivation was scale at all costs. And I think that creates certain incentives and alignments that are just hard to unwind as the market shifted. And there's a lot of different, certainly part of that is from a product suite, looking across the product suite as we went through this process, we identified that there's definitely areas that were good businesses, and there's pockets of that within Convoy that if you just carve that piece out, it was a great business. But given market conditions, there's other parts of the business, particularly just that were, I think, much more susceptible to how the market, the ups and downs in the market. And so, as we brought this, you can see what we're bringing back to market and where we're focusing. These are the areas where Convoy was having a lot of success, and where there definitely was a business. And if you had kind of been able to carve that all out At the time, maybe there could have been something viable, but I think conditions and circumstances just didn't allow for that, and the way things unwound.
So I take it you never considered bringing the trailers on board.
Well, yeah, we did not turn, certainly this year. We've gotten a lot of interest on that, but it is like, if you think about the economics of that, and it's they had a lot of trailers there at the end, and a lot of those trailers came online during the peak times, and so market conditions shifted. At the same time, though, that was a business that I think was very successful when it was really humming. But this market, it's tough, right? So
yeah, was that similar part of the convoy business? Was that similar to something like I believe the company was called like Baton? It was just pure drop and hook.
Baton was a bit different, and I think Baton got acquired by Ryder, right, for the tech.
Ryder, correct, yeah.
And Ryder has I forget what's the name of their. I'm forgetting it, but they have their own trailer pool program.
Okay.
I can't remember the name right now. There's a few other companies that have come to the market with trailer pool programs. In fact, even Wabash has their own program now. And I think the model makes sense. And I think there definitely will be companies that continue to go after this space. The challenge is it's a very different business. You're managing assets, you've got maintenance concerns, you've got utilization concerns, right? It's huge capital cost. Like, you're bearing that one way or another, and you're bearing those long-term commitments. And it's just managing that. You have it's where brokerage is highly transactional, load by load, like margin. Once you've got trailers, you've got commitments, and so you've got to manage that much more like an asset company would, which I've always said that a broker versus an asset company are solving very different problems. If you're an asset company, you're focusing on the assets and driving utilization of that. You want to keep your trucks moving, you want to keep your drivers moving, you want to manage utilization of the assets. So that's what you're selling into the asset. As where when you're a broker, you've got a load and you're focusing on load coverage. So the focus is like 100% coverage of the load versus 100% utilization of the asset. And those actually are very different problems to solve.
Things that you're optimizing for, yeah. Yeah,
you're optimizing for very different things, and that's why often it's hard to mix those two things together successfully. Because even if you're an asset owner with a broker tacked on, that broker is usually in service of also driving utilization of the assets as its priority, and then secondary focus is going and finding other freight, and vice versa, right?
If you're a broker,
yeah. So it's not that it can't be done, and a lot of. There's a lot of smart people going at it, and they will continue to go at it. I do think the pure plays, it's just when it's a pure play, it's easier to get that focus right out of the gate. But yeah, it was a great. I mean, they built some incredible tech. It's certainly a conversation we continue to have, because shippers are very keen on it, and clearly in brokerages as well, because I think that's an area where brokers often struggle as to how to service drop trailer freight, and how to do that in a way that adds incremental value and is really creating unique capacity solutions. So I don't think that the story's over there, but I think we'll still see innovation in the market, and we have incredible technology on the shelf. So finding an opportunity for that is definitely something we continue to discuss.
Bill, we have a couple questions here from our audience, and before I show those, I'm wondering, the brokerage division, is that only U.S. domestic freight, or are you always also international? Do you have offices in Europe or anything like that? Because I know you have employees for Flexport internationally for the port.
Flexport has offices in Europe and offices in APAC. The convoy tech is domestic only, as we brought it back online. But certainly one of the things for me that's been exciting about joining Flexport is that you've got this huge. It's a global company. We do have trucking teams internationally, but focused on the drayage and the cartage and the forwarding side. We do very limited pure truckload internationally.
Okay.
So that's certainly, as I look at where can we extend this tech, where can we build upon this platform, Flexport operates in a lot of different areas, and I think that's one of the fun parts. That's also one of the things that coming into a company like Flexport is, we by the nature of we're being an international global forwarder, you have to have a lot of partnerships. You have to be very ecosystem focused, meaning you can't do it all yourself out of the gate. that's something too that as we're bringing this back to market, trying to be very thoughtful about, okay, we can't be all things to all people. How can we play this more like an ecosystem play? How can we really get value of the tech? How can we partner more with brokers as we come to market, as an example? Because we use brokers internally right now, which coming in as a broker, like from a broker background, it's always like, well, okay, well, how are we going to balance this? And then you kind of learn that, where people can play roles. And certainly as we go internationally, I think that's like, you've got to Flexport has partnerships internationally. And so if there's ways that we can leverage this tech and be thoughtful about that as we go international, and working with other partners of building some of our own capabilities and, finding those right balances, that's where it gets real interesting. Right. And
sure.
Yeah,
I saw Uber Freight expanded, I think, into Poland recently, and there's obviously a lot of other players in the freight brokerage tech industry, like Sender and stuff like that. So I just kind of was curious on that front.
Didn't Sender actually acquire Uber Freight's Europe division originally?
Yeah, that was my project back.
Nice.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Europe. We launched
nice.
Europe, and then it sold to Sender. It ended up being a good deal in the end, but timing, because that all unwound during COVID, right? So,
okay.
Are we going to go really big, or does it make sense to sell it off at this point? But yeah, Sender. I don't think Uber Freight has any new operations. Maybe they do.
I think for some reason I found an article yesterday that was talking about Polish trucking. It was the reaction of Uber Freight entering the Polish market. And I don't know, this is from November of 2023, so it's a pretty recent article. I didn't look more deeper into it. It might have been just stating old news, or but yeah, that's what I did see. Real quick, I'm going to pull up just some questions here because I know we're running a little bit low on time. Marco's back. Speaking of the market, where do you see dry truckload rates going this year? Any opinion? Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that I don't have enough of our own data yet to really have a strong opinion. So I'm relying on others and their input. And the general sentiment I'm still hearing is Q3, expecting it to start to converge, and that we'll start to see a flip. Although back at Manifest, I think the chatter was is it flipping right now? And now it seems like it's flattened a little bit. I can say that, as for the first set of loads we've done, we've been able to buy pretty well in the market. So it does seem like we're still probably in that, we're definitely not seeing a crunch yet there, or a squeeze.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still betting on Q3 or tail end. I'd say I'm planning on it being relatively flat, hoping that it'll turn. That's
Sure. Were you affected at all by the AT&T outages yesterday, the Convoy app?
Yeah, no, it didn't. I know I kind of was reading that after the fact. I was traveling yesterday.
Got it. Okay. Sure.
We didn't.
You might see a big surge today once the AT&T. I think AT&T's back up and running. So
yeah, and I think it went off after what was the timing on that? Because it wasn't during peak volume or booking hours for us. We'd already seen most of our freight get booked.
Reed, do you have AT&T?
I do.
And Christian, you don't have AT&T. You have T-Mobile, right? Okay.
But I definitely talked to a couple of carriers that were saying that they just had problems, and they had to switch servers over to paper logs and things like that for a short period of time. But I think it's back up and running now. So, and it's definitely not something that just affected Convoy, right? It's or Flexport Convoy. It was industry wide, nationwide, really, not even freight specific. So unfortunate, but yeah.
Okay, guys, we have 6 minutes left. I think we have plenty of questions, Christian. Don't we have more questions from Twitter? We also have Zach here, and I'm wondering maybe we just go real quick, just
let me finish off questions real quick.
Gina here yesterday was saying it wasn't great in Chicago yesterday. No drivers were answering or calling. It was so quiet. Okay,
good to know. Outage, yeah.
All right. So, we can address this one first. When is Typecast Ryan Peterson coming into the arena?
I'll ask him.
Cool.
Why did he leave Amazon's broke? Yeah, that was I mean, this was one of the it was fun to be able to launch the brokerage on Amazon. That was something I did right near the end. We kind of scaled that up. I left it in good hands though. Left it in good hands. Yeah.
Nice. I don't know. I didn't get what this context of this extra $150, but I imagine I kind of got what it's aiming
DM
at.
me, shoot me a note. We'll I don't know.
That's Thomas from FreightWaves.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Yeah.
I think for Twitter that was it. That we got.
So Bill, you've been traveling or moving around the country like just for jobs, right? Because like you were in Chicago. Originally, you were in Dallas.
Yeah.
Then you went to Chicago. Now you're in the Bay Area. Before you were at Amazon, were you also in Seattle for a little bit?
Yeah, Seattle for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. How does that like? You just like I'm just curious because like that's a lot. You're like kind of like a nomad. You spend a lot of time in Europe too. Right now you're in New York. How do you like I don't know have like maintain like some kind of balance in life when you just like keep moving around?
Yeah. Yeah, and I always like to say too, I've been to 49 states too. I'm in North Dakota. I still get to eat in North Dakota. But yeah, and I've lived in Dallas, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Boston, Burlington, Vermont, Chicago, Seattle, and SF now. So I got the whole.
Wow.
In terms of balance, I do think that's one of those key things as you like progress in your career. You got to find the way to maintain energy. I always say it's more about just like on a day-to-day basis, what do you need to be able to show up every day and like have energy and for me, like it's the fundamentals. Like, got to get my sleep schedule down, right? Like when I travel, I got to like bring melatonin, make sure I get my right sleep schedule because if I don't get my 8 hours, I'm not as productive every day. It's make sure you find time for, particularly like, family is a big part for me. So make sure I find that time and carve it out. My wife and I have been together since 2003. So we're like, coming on 21 years together. So finding that time and carving that out is very important with kids. I mean, I'm here with my son, right? So we can have like time and have a weekend and kind of build those memories. So I think you've always got to.
She read your dissertation and decided to go on a date with you?
No, it was, we actually did. So with my wife, we went to high school together. So we both, Richard in high school, class of 96, but we didn't date in high school. It's one of those where we met at a college party, a year later. And we're like, oh, I know you. And she was, the story there is, she was a cheerleader. I was kind of the like nerdy, punkish kid, and we were in different scenes, very classic. Met after high school, came together.
Nice.
You look really young, Bill. Like I wouldn't take you for class of 96, to be honest. I thought you were like a lot older than that. Oh, but younger than that.
I'll tell, I've gotten that before, and partly why I grew my beard out is it gives me a little more, I think, maybe gravitas, makes me look a little bit older. Because I've showed up for speaking engagements, and like, you look awfully young. Are you? It's the
right person.
Yeah, sure, the right person.
Before we get off, I wanted to also touch on the fact that you do some racing, right? You mentioned in Vegas. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That was so partly when I had that race car fabrication shop. It was because I wanted to race, and I raced rally cars for like 3 years. I still do a lot of track days, but I don't race anymore. Racing is it's a very expensive hobby, and it also takes a ton of time. So it's you kind of have to be all in. It has to be an obsession. And so I don't have quite the time for that. But yeah, because in high school, as I mentioned, I was definitely all into cars. When I grew up in Dallas, we used to go to the street races every Friday night and Saturday night and stay out till like 4 a.m., doing street drag races in Dallas. And then when I went to college, I wanted to do race car engineering. That's why I went to Georgia Tech and got big into rally racing. Won the North American Rally Cup in 1997. So like
rally racing is crazy.
Yeah.
There's a trucking company out of Chicago that they have an indie race car team, and it's HMD Trucking. We went to visit them with Christian and I, and they had like the whole trailer came by with like the car, and it was pretty cool to see. And I have like I should have them send you like a car. Like
I love it. I love any kind of racing. Like I love it all. But
maybe Flexport can buy a racing team next.
That's a good investment.
It's probably not the wisest use of resources, but
Come on, you guys just raise some more capital.
no,
It's
like
gonna
Roger,
this is the perfect
Roger
time.
Penske figured it out. He's definitely got the Penske's got it all figured out over there. But yeah, if we could do that, say have a racing team. I'll talk to Ryan about that.
Maybe we can ask him about
keep
that
us
on the
posted.
arena.
Keep us posted.
Sure. Guys, it's
All right,
the
everybody.
hour. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. That was great. I had a great time. I wish we had a little bit longer, but maybe next time we could dig in deeper. We're gonna hit the gong, and that's it for today. And maybe we didn't go through all the questions, unfortunately. We didn't have enough time, but Bill, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
Episode 17 in the books. See you all next week.
Yeah, baby. All right. Happy birthday to Bill's son. Have fun.
Yes, happy
See ya.
birthday.
You want to say hi?
Have fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I have
see
to
you,
ask
Bill.
you though. There was one point where my son was using the restroom.
Okay.
I don't know if you hear that or not.
We're good.
No, we're
I
good.
All good.
we didn't hear anything.
I was trying to talk louder during that because he was like,
All good.
yeah.
All good. All right,
No
guys.
worries. All good.
All right,
All
take
right.
care. Thanks again, Bill.
Take care, Bill. Have fun in New York.